Okay, wow, that took its sweet time. All right, hey everybody, Jacob Centro, managing editor of Fear the Fin, here with Marcus White, staff writer at Fear the Fin, doing a late-ish. It's not really late night yet, but still
Fear the Fin After
Halloween
Dark.
here. Right, exact. Ooh, nice. Fear the Fin after dark. I like that. So let's start with what is currently at this time at 10:50 p.m. Pacific time. Breaking news in that Sharks prospect Jeremy Waugh appears to be have suffered, well, not appears, it definitely has suffered a knee injury, which appears to be pretty serious. According to, we're seeing this from pucknology.net, that the prognosis released Sunday night says he will be out for months and possibly miss the rest of the season. I'll have a post up on this by the time that you're listening to this on iTunes, so you can head to the site of fearthefin.com, where we'll also have the video, which I'm not going to recommend you watch unless you like watching knee-on-knee collisions. But for those of you, I'm looking at you, Tomasz. Do not watch the video. It's not worth it, buddy. All right. We'll send you a nice copy of Minions, and you're going to watch that instead. Don't watch this. We had him rated, we being the readers of Fear the Fin, had him rated as the number 7 prospect in the Sharks system, and this is it's pretty brutal. This was the top defender in the system for sure. This sucks a lot. He's only 19, which I guess maybe is the silver lining of the whole thing. But this is pretty tough to see a guy, so young and so promising and so talented take, what can be, a career-altering injury. Yeah, this is pretty brutal.
TVA in Canada first reported the news actually yesterday on October 30th in the afternoon. I think part of the reason it didn't get picked up as much as it maybe would have was because the tweet is originally written in French. Corey Prodman picked it up today. I took a semester of French, and I cannot say that I can exactly translate it, but it does seem to say that the absence will be prolonged, and it seems like it's going to be indefinite. Corey Prodman tweeted that it's possible that Waugh's season is over, and this is a big blow. Not to mention for Waugh's career, but as well for the Sharks and their blue line situation. We haven't talked about it necessarily on the podcast, but I think we've alluded to it, and you can tell it by our reader ranking and seeing 6 forwards ahead of Waugh, who was the 7th rated player under 25. And he was the highest defenseman. Not a lot of depth on the blue line in the system. Yes, Tim Heat is there. Dylan DeMello is up with the big club, and Mirko Mueller's playing down with the Barracuda, as is Julius Bergman. But there's really not, though, a ton of depth on the blue line. And Waugh was, I think it's fair to say, without a doubt, the Sharks' best prospect on that blue line. I know the Sharks were looking forward to him having another year in junior and playing a lot of minutes for his team. Pete DeBoer even mentioned that he was a guy who could potentially play for a World Junior team in Team Canada. And Pronman, I believe, wrote that there was talk that Waugh could even be or maybe not even Pronman. Somebody wrote, I read that Waugh could have been in the leadership group for that Canadian World Junior team. We know how big of a deal is the World Juniors. The World Juniors are, especially in Canada, and how it's a good showcase for young players to see how they're doing compared to the best of their peers from other countries. It really stakes for the Sharks. I'm interested to see, and get more information from and hear from them on, what the process is for Waugh, because it's a big blow, not only for their farm system, but potentially to this guy's career. The good news is he's 19. He should still have some time, but we saw how long it took Tomas Hertl to really truly come back from a season-ending knee injury. And, yes, the rehab is a lot easier than it used to be, but knees are no fickle matter. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll keep a close eye on that, or as close as we can. It was even tough for Timo Meier last year. Following guys in the queue is just a struggle. The media coverage can be pretty thorough. It can just also be primarily in French, which I also took a semester of French in college, and it wasn't great. It wasn't great. Right. Anywho, we'll keep you guys in the loop on that as best we can. All right. Well, moving on to, I guess, some more positive news. We'll kind of hit on what went on in this last week for the Sharks. Swept a 3-game homestand, beating the Ducks, the Jackets, and then the Predators. Obviously, 2 of those wins being more impressive than one of them. Sharks look good. They looked convincing. I think that they definitely took their foot off the gas in that third period against the Predators, which is, while not shocking, is a little disappointing because I felt like that's something they didn't really do very much last season. I thought that was to their benefit a great deal. That being said, I really liked how they played against the Ducks. They did what they needed to do against the Blue Jackets, played a much better game. And, they looked consistently, at least through the first 2 periods, like the better team against Nashville. What was your takeaway from the homestand?
I think they looked very strong. I think the game, against Anaheim, they were a little unlucky, and they ran into 2 really good goaltenders because Jonathan Bernier, before he got hurt, was playing really well, made an incredible save on Chris Tierney. The Columbus game, dominant. Even though they didn't score a ton at even strength, and the second power play unit really bailed them out. And one of the stranger games I can remember watching, sitting in the press box and having the lights go out on the rink was pretty strange. I don't think I'm ever gonna see that again. Although Pete DeBoer said he's seen it plenty of times. And then obviously the win against Nashville, I think yes they dialed it back in the third period, but for my money, I think that was maybe their most impressive win of the season. Just how much they overwhelmed Nashville. I was also surprised. I don't know how you felt about Nashville, Jake, but I was surprised to see how poorly they played in some areas and how bad Pekka Rinne was. I know he struggled at even strength last year, but he's been having a better year at even strength this year. But I mean, 2 of the second and third goal, I think you can both say were like pretty much on him. The second goal, I don't know how he didn't cover that puck when Joe Pavelski shot it from behind the blue line, or the goal line, excuse me. I thought for sure he was going to cover the puck. And then the next one, he just completely misreads the angle and Tommy Wingles catches him out of position. But, that's not to, de-emphasize how impressive the Sharks were. And I think, they're picking it up. And I think that, they maybe started a little slow, but I mean, 6-3 through 9 games, you can't complain about that. They'd be first place in the division if it wasn't for the seemingly unbeatable Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with Pekka Rinne is the same thing that is true for many Finnish goaltenders and European goalies in general, is that when they are bad, it looks really, really, really bad. It's just a matter of the goaltending style being very aesthetically displeasing, I know, in part. And they make a lot of these athletic, incredible, impossible saves. But because they are so mobile, when they make a mistake, it looks a lot worse than when a guy like Martin Jones makes a mistake. When Martin Jones makes a mistake, it's like, oh, he didn't cover the post, right? Because he didn't slide up and pinch up against that's a big problem for him and has been over the past year, right? But when Pekka Rinne makes his mistake, it's like, he decides he wants to play a puck that's 15 feet in front of the net, and only Jesus Christ knows why. So it's one of those things where the mistakes aren't necessarily they could even be equal, especially by save percentage, which is really at the end of the day the only thing that matters, of course. But Pekka Rinne's mistakes look just awful, and honestly, I don't think he's moved backwards the past couple years. And I think injuries have to at least be part of the discussion because he's had a real hard time staying on the ice. And if he's not good, the Predators are in some trouble here. And it kind of seems like they're already – it's one of those things where, like last year, right, the Ducks start very slow and end up winning the division. Why? Well, in part because the Pacific sucked.
Yeah.
Nashville does not have that luxury.
No.
Those teams are good, all of them.
Yeah.
Even the bad teams are scary.
Yeah, I agree.
And so I think that's an actual concern if this skid lasts longer. It's like the Kings this year, right? They're going to be without Jonathan Quick, and they're going to struggle a little bit because of that. But who cares? They're in the Pacific. They'll be okay.
Is more
Correct.
damning than 2-6 in the Pacific, I think, for sure. And I think, Nashville, luckily for them, they faced a pretty loaded schedule to start. We were talking about before the show. They've faced all playoff teams so far through 8 games. And, if you're not firing at all cylinders to start the year, you're not going to look very good. I can't imagine them, even with this start, missing the playoffs, though. I'm sure if they do, the readers and listeners will tweet at Old Takes Exposed, and I'll be exposed as the fraud that I am. So
Absolutely, they can do that for me too. I can't wait. It'd be my most famous moment yet. So yeah, no, I was pretty happy with how the Sharks played overall in this homestand. I really liked how they played against Anaheim in particular, and didn't play stupid, which is a problem sometimes against the Ducks. I think the Sharks, especially the past couple years, been a lot smarter playing the Ducks than they used to be. There was a time when the Sharks would let the Ducks get under their skin a little bit and play that, idiot game that they like to play. When the Ducks get down by a couple goals, they just turn just stupid.
Yeah, and I think I wonder if that's a DeBoer thing compared to it. And sorry to interrupt, but I think, anecdotally, now that I think about it, the last couple of years under DeBoer, you really haven't seen. I don't think you've seen too many, not necessarily incidents, but like flare-ups, so to speak. And I can't say whether or not this is true or what. I can't even really back this up. I'm just saying what I've seen and can kind of remember it. I think with Todd McClellan, you saw a little more some chippier games. I think especially in these rivalry games. I think the Sharks have maybe kind of learned to channel that physicality into productive ways and to channel their emotion in productive ways. Even last year a game, the first game of the season, instead of getting into a line brawl after Milan Lucic ran Logan Couture was basically just laughing in his face and trolling him. That's a stray observation, but I think there might be something there about DeBoer having this team be more composed against teams like that and not letting them get off their game. Because I can definitely remember when especially in games they lost to the Ducks, even if they got down, or that there'd be some shenanigans there, and it seems like DeBoer's minimized those for sure.
Yeah, I think part of that is just a personality thing, and part of it might also have to do with just the Sharks core getting a little bit older and more experienced, obviously too. But yes. If you were to compare Todd McClellan and Pete DeBoer to animals, right? Todd McClellan would be more like, I don't know, a honey badger, whereas Pete DeBoer would be like a sloth, maybe. And I love sloths. Sloths are great.
Yeah, I was gonna say a sloth, maybe not as slow, but just kind of cool and calm and kind
he
of
has resting sloth face. Like it's kind of like all the time.
Even you don't see even in just watching the practices, he's not yelling or screaming. He's not. If he wants to make a point, he's a little more vocal. But he's just he just kind of lets the chips fall as they may. And I think that's definitely benefited the Sharks over the last year and a half for sure. And I think they're playing right now. They're playing as good of hockey as I can remember them playing under Pete DeBoer. They're just not scoring at even strength for whatever reason. We saw it change the other night against Nashville, but I think if when they do start scoring goals at even strength, and I think his bigger reason for this turnaround too over the last 3 games is that Martin Jones has been very good the last 3 games. He was really strong on this homestand. He didn't allow any weak goals like I thought he may have on the road trip, and I think he's not facing a ton of shots, and I'm sure that's a little difficult for him. He'll never say that though, and I asked him after the game when they played against Columbus. I'm like, well, what's been different for you? And he's like, the difference between winning and losing in this league is like very thin. So honestly, not much has really changed. And I thought, that's pretty fitting from a guy who's so steady and even keeled. And I think I think you've seen that from him, when he's needed to make some saves for them the last couple of games, but every odd man rush that I can remember for the Ducks, the Predators, and the Blue Jackets pretty much just ended up in nothing because he just swallowed the puck and they got a defensive zone faceoff. And that's all they need from him.
Right. And I also think it's fair to say that while the Sharks have definitely made, because they will make defensive mistakes, I think this year they've been much better at back checking than they were last year. Yeah. That's definitely something that I would like to take a kind of a deeper look into at some point. Last year, it seemed like scenario, typical one. Brent Burns makes a stupid play, right? Because he's great, but he is prone to make one of those every 5 games. Just like
and you're going to take that. You're going to take that with him.
Yep, absolutely. I'm not doing this to bag on Burns. I'm just saying that he would do that, and then it would be kind of like, well, now the guy's one-on-one, and here comes Burns back, and he takes a penalty or whatever. And now it kind of seems like I think this is probably Paul Martin adjusting and better understanding the way the gambles that Burns takes. And I think that they're paying off more this year because they're working better together. And I think we even saw that in the playoffs last year. Like, it really seemed like at the beginning of the year, there was some concern over Burns because, Sharks fans complain about their best players because that's what we do.
Every fan base does, for sure.
Whatever, it's just Sharks fans. They are the worst. Oh, I just hate them. And I think as we got closer to the playoffs, we saw fewer and fewer of those, and then people stopped talking about it. And it's like, right, because I think that that kind of chemistry between the two guys has really improved a lot, and which is great news. And I think that goes, really lends to why the Sharks defense has been so good. I mean, I can't remember. There's probably never been a time. This is probably the best defense group that the Sharks have ever had in franchise history.
Oh, and I agree. And I
by
think,
a lot.
I mean, the David Schlebko signing, and we touched on it. It feels like every podcast we've talked, we really can't though say enough how good he's been. I mean, he's one of the best possession players at even strength, and he's turned Brendan Dillon, I think, into a really good defenseman too. I don't think it's because Schlemko is carrying him, and I think I'd like to see them sustain it over a full season, but their games really mesh together. Dillon's content to get rid of the puck quickly or get it to Schlemko. And, Dillon scored the other night against Columbus and was a little unlucky to have that goal disallowed. I think, that's such an iffy call, and, whether or not it's in spirit of the rule, we could have an hours-long discussion about it. But the fact of the matter is they generated that zone time and they scored that goal, and, Dillon scored it. But I think that turnaround has been as key as anything for the Sharks because, lately, and I haven't looked at their summation numbers, but against Nashville and against Anaheim, Vlasic and Braun weren't amazing
We're not good. They were bad
in the puck possession department. And I can't say remembering watching the games, I can't say that necessarily fits with the eye test. I think
I agree with that.
I don't know what their quality of competition is, and I still think that if their possession numbers, if they're low, they're still probably doing their job. Like Vlasic for years until recently wasn't a relative positive player possession-wise, but that's because he was playing such tough minutes. I'm not sure if that's still the case. I haven't looked at his quality of competition and stuff, but I'd imagine he's still playing really tough minutes. And, if you can afford to have those guys maybe not be as strong if your third defense pairing, is doing what David Schlemko and Brendan Dillon are doing together. And I think, a full season of that and a full postseason of that is going to make a huge difference for the Sharks going forward. I'm curious though, Jake, what do you think about Mikkel Bodker's start? Because he hasn't had the same maybe flashy kind of start that Schlemko has possession-wise, but the puck hasn't gone in for him, but I think he's played well to start this season in San Jose. I don't know. What do you think about his start?
Yeah, I think he's been fine. I think he's done what he needed to do. I don't think that he was a guy that was going to make a huge visual impact on the team, to be honest, because he's going to be playing with guys that are a lot more talented and a lot flashier than him. I think if they were asking him to play on the fourth line, we would be maybe paying a little more attention to what exactly he's doing and how he's improving that game. But the fact that he's played both on the Couture line, which, he's the third best player on that line, and now he's played some games on the top line, obviously the third best player on that line. I think that what he has provided is a really good fit for both of those groups. I really do think he's a great fit on the Thornton line because he provides that, like we've talked about, that speed game. He will go below the goal line. He'll chase down pucks and kind of be a nuisance for the other team, which gives Joe Thornton and Joe Pavelski space to work, which is, again, that is the goal of that winger on that line. And even when he was with Couture, I think that he fits great into Couture's style of game, and so does Donskoy for that matter, and Ward, the wingers that really like to just score, which lets Couture kind of quarterback the line. And I think that's really where he's the most comfortable, is when he can kind of carry the puck into the zone, look to his wingers, kind of see what's up, and kind of try to lead the other four guys on the ice into a situation that can benefit, lead to positive shot numbers. So I've liked what he's done. He's a guy that I know coming in doesn't have great possession numbers, and I even think in San Jose he's probably more of a drag on possession than he is a boost on any of these lines, because again, he's the worst player on the lines. But I think that his style of game fits really, really well with the guys that he's playing with, and I think that's a big thing that sometimes we kind of overlook, because it really is hard to evaluate with numbers. Who fits well with X player, and I think this is the Brendan Dillon, David Schlemko thing as well. Obviously, Brendan Dillon was playing with a very bad player in Roman Polak, but beyond him not being good, there just weren't a good we're not a good fit. Those are two styles that do not play well together. Brendan Dillon wants to be the guy that leads the zone exit. And what I mean by that is he has the puck in the defensive zone, throws it up to his defense partner. The defense partner then carries it to the wingers, and that's how the movement works.
Yes.
If Brendan Dillon he's not the guy that can carry the puck out of the defensive zone. That's not his game. It's just not. And asking him to do that is unfair. And I think that's part of the reason he got so much criticism last year, is because he was being asked to do a job he's just not really equipped to do. And now the whole team, and what I love about this team, and what I love about the kind of evolution it feels like of Pete DeBoer as the head coach of the team, is that he's really done a great job at putting guys in situations where they can really succeed. I think his ability to take the temperature of the team right now is just so much better than it was when he took over a year ago. And I think that's really what has me more excited about this team than, even just their play on the ice in general. I just really think that bodes well for them moving forward.
And I think, that was something I was worried about. We talked to, in conversations, the thing I wanted to explore but didn't get a chance to was in his first two stops in the NHL, in his second season, his teams got worse. Yes, they both stops. He lost significant players. It's hard to replace Zach Parise in New Jersey a season after you go to the Stanley Cup final. And it's even hard to replace Jay Bouwmeester in Florida. He was in Florida right in that time when they were a mediocre at best team, not a lot of high draft picks coming in. You'd love to see him maybe coach. Now, obviously, you want to with the Sharks. I'm sure he'd love to be able to coach Florida now with the talent they have, as opposed to what he coached then. But I think like you said, the familiarity with this group has really helped him, and I think he has a very strong read of the room, and it's well said about putting players in positions where they're going to succeed. And there's a player I remember against Anaheim. It seemed like they're going to break out the puck. Sami Vatanen has it. He's an incredible defenseman. Bodker comes in, ties him up, and then the Sharks create like two scoring chances on that play with the Thornton and Pavelski line. That's because, like you said, Bodker's a nuisance, and I think this is a signing I was a little bit hesitant on because I looked a lot at Bodker's possession numbers, and I saw a player who struggled in that department, but he was on two bad teams. And, so far I think he's been as good as advertised. They'd probably like to see him score a little more, but I agree with you. I think he's been a very good fit on both of those lines. And I think, we talked about this in previous podcasts too. I think another big development for the Sharks is that, Couture, the scoring has maybe dried up a little bit, but he looks just as good as he did in the postseason. And I think him, kind of taking that next step and being at that level is really going to help them because, Thornton's scoring numbers are down a little bit to start the season. And I don't think it's anything to be concerned about. I think it's just more of the team's kind of struggling to score at even strength, but they're a team, it's hard not to get ahead of yourself because it's so early in the season. You got to, really restrain what's going on. But, if all things hold and they can score more at even strength, this looks like a team that could once again do serious damage in the postseason. And considering where they were 2 years ago, I think I really can't believe that I'm saying that.
Yeah, I think that 2 years ago it kind of felt like it was, all right, it was over. Like that was the end. And not because of the team, the guys on the team, just because it felt like the franchise was saying that. Was hitting the reset button. And they were. That is what they did. And they just didn't they did such a poor job of tanking that then they were like, oh, I guess we're just going to try to contend again this year. So I guess we're doing this. Let's do this. Well, let's do this. And so then, and here we are.
It's such a strange year too to look back on. I think that reset year, so to speak, because they did restock the cupboard in the draft. They did sign a lot more free agents, but I still wonder too. Did they need to? Maybe they wouldn't have gotten Timo Meier, but I agree with you. You're shaking your head. Yeah. I don't think they needed to take that step back. I think there were available players.
Like 9 pick,
yeah,
big freaking deal.
There were available players in free agency that could have helped them. And they still could have signed Joel Ward and Paul Martin in 2015, going into 2015-16. It stunk that year, and I still question whether or not they needed to do it. But if that was the wake up call for management, and for them to say, look, we got to go for it, then it's sitting where they are right now and coming off a Stanley Cup final appearance and seeing how they've been active in free agency each of the last 2 years. I mean, Elliot Friedman, who's a guy you trust as much as anybody, reported that they were in on Steven Stamkos. Like, when in their franchise history could you have ever expected them to be in on the best free agent available? So it's a good spot if you're a Sharks fan right now, for sure.
Yep, absolutely. I think part of that is obviously responding to the fact that people stop showing up to games. Because that's the way it works when you charge $50 for upper bowl seats. People aren't going to go if the team sucks, and it is even beyond. You see these fans came every year, sold out the building when the players fell short, right? And I use that kind of facetiously. But when you get there's a huge difference as a sports fan between the idea that, okay, a team is doing its best and loses, and the management's not really committed to winning. And when you kind of get that sense, that's what sucks the life out of a building and a fan base.
I think the fan base, and maybe I'd love to kind of examine it and love to see this examined, because I think, that Ducks game, there was the Warriors home opener, so the attendance wasn't as great. Still an announced sellout, but the Columbus game, it was raining, but it wasn't an announced sellout. Right before the game, and I understand that there was rain before that delayed people getting in, but right before the game, it looked like a preseason game. And I think there's still, even with the cup run, I still think that I don't think that step back, and this is me speaking hypothetically. I haven't talked to fans. I haven't, I'm couching this journalistically as much as possible to say this is just an opinion, but I think the fans haven't fully had the trust regained by management, even with the recent steps the Sharks have taken. I don't think they fully trust that, okay, they're back and they're going to do whatever it takes to win, because I think that year burned Sharks fans, specifically to season ticket holders, more than we maybe realize and more than we recognize, because they sold out. Every game was an announced sellout, and the last 2 years that hasn't been the case, and I could not have imagined saying that was the case. And maybe it wasn't just last year. Maybe it was also the collapse against LA, blowing that 3-0 lead. That could have been it. But I think, you put those hand in hand together, and I think that's explains the attendance drop off for sure.
I think you also have to look at the fact that there was a lockout the season before that too, which doesn't help matters any. Listen, the NHL has done a very, very, very good job of taking a very good product and just doing the worst possible job it can at selling it.
I agree.
And I think you're right, though. I mean, this is what I was saying last year when people were like, oh, man, I don't get it. Why aren't the Sharks selling out games? It's like, really? You don't get it? Because they alienated their fan base, the people that have been giving them thousands and thousands of dollars over the years. And people aren't just going to come and give you money for no reason. They're not going to do it. They can stay at home and watch the game on Comcast.
Yeah.
And, that's how it goes. And even beyond the fact that the team purposely made itself worse, because that's what they did. It's that, or Doug Wilson is an idiot, right? So it's one of those two things. Either made themselves worse, or...
And I don't think the latter is
I don't
think there's any chance that's
correct.
The truth.
It's the first thing. It is the first thing, in my opinion. And beyond that, then right in the middle of it all, their idiot owner talks about wanting to move the team because he's unhappy with the TV deal.
Right. Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's how this works.
Yeah.
Fans operate on a sense of loyalty to their team. And if that loyalty is not returned, then guess what? Fans say, hey, fuck you. The Warriors just won 73 games.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's a factor I hadn't even considered, because there were the floated rumors that that they weren't happy with the TV deal, and I remember
the Warriors want to build that brand new arena right on the waterfront in San Francisco. I bet Hasso Plattner would love that.
Yeah, and I think someone tweeted at our account. I hadn't seen it reported anywhere, but this was a tweet I saw. I'm not sure. I haven't seen it reported anywhere else, but there's rumblings that they're looking to opt out of their lease with the arena. I haven't heard that anywhere, so I'm not sure where that. I'm just irresponsibly repeating what was told to me on Twitter, which I shouldn't have done. But yeah, no, I think I think they're a little scarred. But I think if management keeps doing what they're doing now, I think people are going to flock back, because they've got a really good team at the very least for this year, and whether or not they do beyond this year, I think the management group and the ownership group is committed to keeping the team very, very good. So it's it's not doom and gloom. It is a good spot to be in. And considering where they were, because 2014-15, that was, I think, as low of a year for Sharks fans as there's been in recent memory. And you mentioned NHL, not doing a great job. Like, when was the last time you saw PK Subban on a television advertisement for their league? Like, he's playing in Nashville. There's no excuse. He's still not being marketed. I don't understand.
Now, this is going to blow your mind. The NHL might have a little bit of a race problem.
Yes, I agree.
Wow.
Yeah.
What?
No, it's true. And guy like him, though, can help alleviate that very quickly. And, I think they're just so and I think Subban even said, he's like, the league, we don't market our stars well enough. It's all about, they market the teams well, but it's not about, the stars. And I think you see that in television ratings. And when you're a network and you're catering and you want to get ratings and you realize the sport is regional and you want those strong regional ratings. That's why the Buffalo Sabres are on NBC Sports Network so much. Like, it doesn't make sense from a hockey perspective, but from a marketing perspective in a sport that's notoriously regional, it does. I still think, though, you can grow the game by getting fans used to seeing players like Subban, players like Austin Matthews. I mean, they flexed a Toronto game, the NBC Sports Network, for crying out loud, after Matthews scored 4 goals. I think part of them gets it, but it's just, for whatever reason, it hasn't added up.
I think part of it's two things. One, the NHL has been hyper regional and been very proud of that fact. The problem with that is that, which is also true in baseball, right?
Yes.
The problem is that baseball's also been successful in hyper regional. The NHL has never been successful; it has always been hyper regional. Yeah. The second problem is that at some point the NHL decided it wanted to be the anti-NBA. Which, as a business perspective, is about as fucking stupid as you could possibly be. Because, spoiler alert, the NBA, it's not
the niche I would choose, but it is a niche. I'll say that.
Yes, and again, this goes back to the NBA or the NHL having, spoiler alert, a pretty serious race problem, and even beyond that, they have a player relation problem, which is why the NHL has had so many lockouts, whereas baseball hasn't had one since we were in diapers. And the NBA had that scare. Obviously, it had a problem with it, but as by and large, it doesn't have the reputation that the NHL has. The difference between the two lockouts or work stoppages is that the NHL's happened because the owners hate the players, whereas the NBA's happened because the players said "screw you" to the owners.
Yeah,
it's a difference, and people get that. And I think because we're coming into an age where people, especially people our age, are siding with the players over the teams.
Yeah.
There's a kind of a disconnect between us and management, and not just management in teams, but management in the corporate offices, management in
marketing,
and the network levels. Part of and it's got to be said, part of the problem is that the NHL sold to NBC, who also doesn't know what the hell it's doing.
And as strong as their coverage can be at times, I think they do a good job on a game by game level. But you're seeing, like, I'm sure they kicked themselves. I mean, they got a pretty good TV deal from NBC, but I'm sure they are kicking themselves seeing the television money that some of these other leagues got, because NBC underpaid them for that asset for sure, for TV
Absolutely.
rights. And it's a ways down the line, but I think that's gonna have an effect on when they're looking for their next TV partner, because I think that could, we could, again, highly speculative, play the speculative lack of journalism music, but I think that maybe they go back to an ESPN because they feel that they were disrespected by an NBC. I think that's part of the reason the World Cup ended up at ESPN. ESPN was able to pay for it, but I think too they figured, okay, we got kind of lowballed by NBC, which is part of the reason we have to do the World Cup to begin with. So very interesting for sure. I think
absolutely. I think that part of the thing is that and it's hard to separate how much of this is the NHL and how much of this is NBC.
Yes.
If you, and I know you are also, if you watch a lot of soccer like I do, you see how freaking amazing NBC Sports Premier League coverage is.
I think they have great production people on both sides.
True, you're right.
NHL, I think their production guys do a great job, but I mean, it is a I think it'll depend on the night.
NBC hockey. You know, she doesn't exist.
Right.
There's no Arlo White either. You know.
Yeah.
I'm not a big Doc
though.
fan, but
see, that's where we
he's terrible. He is terrible. I'm sure he's a very nice man, but I'm not a huge fan.
But it is. I think there's a you know, a difference for sure. I think I don't want to say that I don't feel like NBC's NHL coverage, like, because I know, you know, soccer coverage in the past, not on NBC but on other networks, Fox. They talk down to their viewers and they treat them like they don't know the sport. I don't get that sense when I'm
watching. Which is ironic, by the way, because Eric Winalda gets paid to talk about soccer on that
yeah,
network,
exactly. So. But I don't get the sense that NBC does that with their NHL coverage. But, you know, it is interesting because their Premier League coverage is so top of the line. Yet, you know, I think a lot of people I don't think the NHL coverage is universally as loved.
Well, part of the problem is that you look at their studio crew and it's Mike Milbury and Jeremy Roenick, you know, and it's not that those guys are certainly not talking down to anybody. Right. It's just that they are it's just they're out of touch with the market. Not that the NHL has, but with the market the NHL wants.
Right.
They're speaking to their audience. They're just not speaking to the audience they actually want to have. You know, it's like the dress for the job you want thing, and NBC is not doing that.
No, that's a fair point. And I think, you know, I think Milbury's grown on me lately. I think he's dialed it back, but you know, you look at ESPN's World Cup coverage, and Brett Hull was basically a better version of Mike Milbury, a guy who's just going to come in, give his like insanely hot take, and like be kind of funny about it. Hull was a better version of that than Mike Milbury. I do like Keith Jones, but
I like Keith Jones too. I feel like Keith Jones is kind of underrated because he gets dragged down by his line mates.
It's Milbury or Roenick all the time.
I know. Yeah.
You get to see him shine, but I think
he's the Matt Nieto of the NBA.
that's a good segue if you want to go into the.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's talk Matt Nieto and Michael Haley. Let's do it.
We could do it. We just wrote about it today.
Okay, so Michael Haley played in all three games of the homestand.
Yes, all 3 games of the homestand.
They won all 3. Hey, let me bounce something off you, Marcus. Have the Sharks lost this season with Michael Haley in the lineup?
They're 4-0. They beat the Islanders and they won every game at home.
I mean, correlation, causation.
Of course.
I would wave Matt Nieto tomorrow. Send him right back to Long Beach. All right, I don't need him anymore.
Him and Emerson need him.
Yeah, exactly. They can room together. No, but in all seriousness, I think Michael Haley has played better than I thought he would.
I agree. I give him credit. He's been, and you know, this is the benefit of having Michael Haley. He's not Mike Brown. He's not John Scott.
Correct.
He is a you know, he's been pretty good, and I think
he does actually try to play hockey. I think we should give him credit for actually like making an attempt to do his job, and I totally respect him as a person. This to me is never about Michael Haley. I know sometimes when we complain about player usage, it feels like it's this personal thing. I have nothing against Michael Haley. I mean, the dude's out there trying to, you know, do a job for his family, and good for him. But
who wouldn't want to be in his position? Of, you've grinded for so long, you've done everything your coaches have asked for you, and now
he has earned a chance
in the NHL.
Absolutely,
it's a great story. But you know, he's just not as good of a player as Nieto. But you know, if this is the bottom of the lineup decision that the Sharks have to make with Nieto and Haley, they are in, like, I saw someone posted in the comments today, the first Sharks game they ever went to, the bottom 6 was like Andrew Desjardins, Mike Brown, Freddie Hamilton, like just names that it's like, oh my God, like how far, like this is the problem we have now. It was so much worse previously, but you know, I agree with what you wrote today. I think Nieto is a better player and has been proven to be a better player. You know, we've talked about it off the air, but I think there is value in guys, even when they're not scoring, like a Tyler Kennedy. I mean, he's a guy, I loved the acquisition when they got him. I thought he was a good player in San Jose. I think, you know, I didn't have the same necessarily expectations, and maybe I slid my expectations. I wasn't expecting him to jump on a line with the Joes and score, you know, 20 to 30 goals. But I was expecting, you know, he's a guy that'll slide up and down in the lineup depending on where you need him. And, you know, I do not think he's not in the NHL right now, is he? He's playing in Europe, right?
Yeah.
Or he's not playing at all?
I don't know if he's playing at all. I know he's been live tweeting a lot of Penguins games.
Okay, well,
it's not a good sign for his playing career. No.
Oh God, he's only 30. I mean, you want to talk about a guy who's been.
You could sign him right now, and he would be great on the Sharks' fourth line. Absolutely, no question. I would take him in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I think I would too. I think he's a guy that I always liked. I still think that was a good trade for San Jose when they.
It was. Yes, it was. Absolutely. I mean, I have no doubt in my mind about that.
16 points in 50 games last year. Like, that's not like.
It's not. And he had good possession numbers.
I think he's an example of a trend you're seeing now. And, you see Lindholm sign with the elimination of the bridge contract, guys like him, just these not necessarily marginal players, but middle of the lineup guys, like teams are just looking for cheaper, younger alternatives. That's not to say that they couldn't get Tyler Kennedy for $550,000 a year or whatever what the league minimum is. But, guys like him, because he was on a $3 million a year deal when he came to San Jose.
Yeah, something like that.
Like they're just those kind of guys are getting frozen out by the changes of what's happened in the NHL with the elimination of the bridge contract. But I agree with what you wrote. I think ultimately it's a marginal decision at the bottom of the roster. But if you want to fully optimize your roster, you play Matt Nieto over Michael Haley. But I think Haley's come in and Haley's done his job, and he hasn't been used a ton by DeBoer. I think I looked on Corsica today and did some math, and I think Nieto played about 9 minutes, just under 10 minutes at even strength per game. I think Haley's playing like
6-ish, right?
Under 8 at even strength per game. I think it's like 31 and 4. This might not have all of the full. No, they played 9 games. That's right. So he's not playing a ton, which isn't great. But
that's more of the concern for me, is that it's like, okay, so someone else is soaking up those other minutes more so than anything else, and that's with an older team. It's not a huge deal, but it's
right.
It's not great. It's not ideal.
It could be, and I think where you're probably seeing guys asked to play more is because I think the last couple of games he's played, but they dominated the game against Columbus, and the game was never really in doubt. The game against
that's a game where you want to see a Michael Haley get 10 minutes or whatever.
Exactly.
Because, I mean,
but against Anaheim, he played less than 5 minutes.
Right.
That's,
and to me, that's kind of like why?
Exactly. And I think part of that too is probably
Jared.
That game was a pretty high. There were a lot of power plays and penalty kills combined in that game.
There were.
I'm not sure it was abnormal.
Also coming on a losing streak, I was not shocked to see him drawn to the lineup.
Of course, yeah, because DeBoer is he's not going to change when he wins, but if there's a loss, he'll tweak with some stuff.
Right.
And I think part of it too, part of the reason is he doesn't play in those extra situations. He doesn't play shorthanded. He doesn't play on the power play. Not that Matt Nieto played on the power play, but I'd have to look at his usage this year. In the past, he's been a pretty reliable contributor on the penalty kill. He's played a good.
Yeah, Nieto is a good penalty kill forward for sure. That's a good idea about that.
And I think, but when you have a glut of, they have so many guys that can play on the penalty kill.
Literally everyone on the roster, except for Mikhail Bodker right now, can play on the penalty kill. I wouldn't put Mikhail Bodker out there.
And Bodker's played penalty kill minutes for. He's played, but he has played there for DeBoer.
And look at the Sharks' shots against on the penalty kill this year, and we'll have a discussion about that because it's not been good.
Yeah, so I think I agree. There's a lot of guys where it's not. It's not. I don't want to say it's a luxury, but it's not a super pressing concern with him. I think long term it is, but I think ultimately Michael Haley's spot is probably going to be taken by one of these young players.
Yeah. Right. So, right, exactly, which is why, right. It's not. To me, this move is less about Michael Haley, and to me, it's more about Matt Nieto, who I think is a good player who's undervalued.
Yeah, and I think it's a good indication about where they think Matt Nieto's game is right now and how they think he's played to start the season. I think it's less of an indictment, that Dylan DeMello hasn't played yet, because it's more like, okay, well, he can't get sent down, but we like him. But our top 6 is just so good right now.
Correct. The depth there is much more so than in the forwards, for sure.
Whereas they haven't, they struggled a bit. They haven't loved what they got from the bottom 6. It didn't help that, Nieto made a turnover that led to a goal against Detroit. That never helps a player who's at the bottom of the roster like that. So, but I think, ultimately, it's hit that Michael Haley spot is ideally for the Sharks going to get taken by Nikolai Goldobin, Kevin Labanc, or Timo Meier by the end of the season. And that brings me to talking about the Barracuda this past weekend. How do you like that?
Let's do it.
Segue, Jay?
Yeah, that's a good segue. That's good. That's that journalism school experience.
Oh yeah.
Go Orange.
That's a different podcast. We could talk Syracuse Orange sports.
Oh, God.
So
no,
my heart's
please
content
don't.
on another
Just
podcast.
kill me. Oh God, not college sports.
We're not as bad as Northwestern people. I'll say that.
Wow. Okay. Jesus Christ. Speaking of low bar. All right, we're gonna talk about the Barracuda. I hate Northwestern almost more than Stanford. All right, we're moving on. We're moving on. I don't want to get hate now. The Barracuda got 3 out of 4 points this weekend against the old Bakersfield Condor, and they're scoring goals and they're fun and it's wonderful. They lost the game because of the model goalie being terrible. Mantis Armalis is not good.
Did he have a bad game against? I thought he stopped like 35 or 39, something like. How many saves did he have?
Okay, well, stopping 35 out of 39 would be terrible. First of all,
not great.
Under 900, so that's bad.
Yeah.
I think he had a game. I thought it was worse than that. I thought it was a 7, not an 8.
His first game he did. He stopped. They won 5-4 against the Rain, and he stopped 11-15. I think this past weekend he was.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That is so bad, dude.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Whew.
But that's he's making it in the Model's defense as a goaltender, moving from a 200 by 100 to 200 by 85 rink is a big change in terms of reading angles. Not to mention living in a different country, I'm sure living in San Jose, California is much different than living in Sweden.
There's so many Trader Joe's though, and there's more than one H&M in San Jose.
Yes, exactly.
What's the big deal? In 130 minutes, Mantis Armalis has an 877. In 115, Troy Grosnick has a 948. The most surprising thing to me here is that Troy Grosnick has fewer minutes than Mantis Armalis. I think that's because Grosnick got hurt and they put in Armalis for a chunk of a game. I was listening to one on the radio, a road game in, I think it was against Stockton. Against the Heat. So that might have something to do with it. Also worth noting that in fewer minutes, Grosnick has made 5 more saves. So
yeah, he's faced more pucks probably.
Yeah, probably.
They're fun. They're good.
Fun. They are just so much fun, man. It's like, man, honestly, I wonder if this is sucking away Sharks season ticket holders because you can go see a really fun team for like half as much money. Yeah,
I'm gonna really try to catch a couple of games from them coming up here because there's a lot of promise there. Pete DeBoer was telling reporters when he was at the Barracuda game that Sommer said that this is as good of a team as he's ever coached.
And I think that's we talked about this before the show, and I think that has to be true. This has to be the best team he's ever had.
They're just so loaded, and I think they're loaded to the point where if they lost a player like Meier or Labanc or Goldobin, they're still going to be a really good team in the AHL, even if they lose one of those players. But, I think the story has to be through their 4 games. And, I unfortunately haven't had a chance to watch them, but just looking at the numbers and reading some reports, Goldobin and Labanc seem to have responded well to getting sent down. They seem to be, when I think we were probably a little more worried about Goldobin than Labanc. I mean, he's obviously not going to play at a 2-point per game pace the whole year, but it seems like he took getting sent down as an opportunity to show why he shouldn't be back there again. And I think the same is true for Kevin Labanc, who out of nowhere to be one of the last cuts on the Sharks roster. So I think that's just super encouraging to see who have played in their first 4 games together. I think, and I'm pretty sure they're on the same line. I think Rourke Chartier is centering their line. So I think they've actually spent a lot of time together and they've played. We talked about how different of a position it was from 2 years ago. The farm system wasn't even in the same boat 2 seasons ago, and you didn't have the same excitement about these young players. But, it really does feel like they have, probably anywhere from 3 to 5 forwards that are capable of playing for the Sharks. I'd say Gaudreau and Ryan Carpenter you could add to that mix as well. I'd be more than comfortable seeing those guys play. And then on defense, if Mirko Mueller can keep establishing himself, and Tim Heed, who was a defenseman of the year in Sweden, if he can be anything promising, there's a lot of intriguing pieces there, and it's great to see them starting off so well, especially down in the last cuts like LeBanc and Goldobin, because if they keep playing like this, they will not be with the Barracuda for very long.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something we'll talk about later into the season. But next year, when it would not shock me to see those guys at least getting a chance just to go on a line together in a fourth line role for the Sharks.
Oh man,
and that would be
especially if a guy like Marlowe walks, and then you have Nieto's I don't think he's unrestricted, but he's restricted. Wingles is gone.
Yeah.
Contract next year. I'm not sure if Melker Karlsson is. I'd have to look that up. Michael Haley's on a 1-year deal, so there's going to be spots to be hypothetically won next year.
The Wingles and Haley spots in particular for me are ones that are up for grabs, because if you could have a fourth line, even today, if you could have one with Goldobin, LeBanc, and Tierney as your fourth line,
I mean that's
amazing.
And I know he LeBanc and Goldobin can show that they've in DeBoer's eyes, if they can be solid enough, because I think he wants his lines to have an identity, and I think he does subscribe to the the need for grit. But he's rolled 4 scoring lines before. He's spread the wealth, and he's rolled 4 really good lines, and he doesn't strike me as a coach who would be unwilling to do that if he sees LeBanc and Goldobin as good enough defensively to do that. Will he see them as good enough? Who knows? It's potentially a year away, but this is I think this is super encouraging. I thought at least one of those 3, Meyer, Goldobin, and LeBanc, would be up with the team by the postseason, but I think it's possible that I don't know if all of them will be, but 2 or 3 of those guys could play their way into San Jose's NHL roster by the end of the season.
Yeah, I think all of them, at least 2 of them will get a few games at some point because someone's going to get injured at some point. So whether or not that becomes a permanent fixture remains to be seen, of course.
Who do you think they take on the road trip if they do take 23? Because DeBoer said it's a possibility. They have to talk about it. But if they do decide to carry 23, were they going to carry 15 and 7? Yeah, if they carry 15 and 22, excuse me. If they carry 22 forwards, who do you think they're going to call?
Probably Gaudreau. Gaudreau. Yeah. He's got experience and blah, 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 whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I don't hate that idea this early in the season either, because I really like that the fact that LeBanc and Goldobin are playing together and are developing something.
Yeah.
I think for their development, especially because they're not going to play every game if they go on the road trip anyway. So I'd rather see them play with the Barracuda than sit in a press box on a road trip.
I agree. And I think I'd like to see, I think he only has 1 goal in 3 games, maybe 1 goal in 4. I'm not sure how he started, but he was a guy who was there until the end. They're not satisfied with Nat Nieto. I'd like to see Barclay Goodrow maybe get a look on that 4th line and see how different he is from when they started last season. I think he's a guy who could, he was probably pretty much replaced. The signing of Danius Zubris last year pretty much replaced him and ensured that he wasn't going to have a spot going forward. But, clearly with, how Haley's replaced Nieto, there's some amount of flexibility on that 4th line. And I think Chris Tierney, Barclay Goudreau, and Tommy Wingles, that's in today's NHL, that's, if you want a 4th line that's physical but is going to, chip in offensively, that's about all you can ask for. So I think Goudreau's is a pretty spot on pick there. I think it's going to be him or Carpenter. I would agree. I think they want to let LeBanc, Goldobin, and especially Timo Meyer, they want those guys to play as much as possible.
I hope if they do take Carpenter, they actually let the poor guy play this time. I felt bad for him on that last road trip. That was brutal.
Yeah,
just
tough.
I really don't understand that at all. And whatever. I mean, not worth spending a lot of time on, obviously, but
course.
If he does
they're not practicing. They didn't practice at all on that road trip. So he's just getting morning skates in pretty much. Like, that's obviously
he does
great.
Probably much better breakfast.
Yeah, that's true. That's got to be true. And, it would be fun, even if you're not playing, as I'm sure that's.
Hey, man, if someone wants to pay me an NHL minimum salary to hang out on a plane with Joe Thornton for a week, I'm there. Tomorrow. Yeah. I'm ready. I've been doing some stretches, and I'm ready to go. Let's do it.
I saw the Sharks tweeted out, or they posted on Facebook. There was a great couple's costume that someone had. Someone was Joe Thornton with the shirt off and the beard, and the other person was Brent Burns from the day they walked through the city.
Oh, wow. Well, yeah. Well, okay. That's also going to be up in the post about this because that sounds fabulous.
They won Halloween as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Wow. That is good stuff.
Good on them.
Yes.
But yeah, excited to see what the Barracuda do the rest of the year. I don't know the AHL very well, but are they a team? Maybe they could make a Calder Cup run. Who knows? I think there's, last year the Black Aces, so to speak, didn't join the Sharks until after they were eliminated from the playoffs. So I think they're gonna try to win, and that's a good thing too. I think for the Barracuda fans and to go to Barracuda games is with this team there's a lot of promise on that Barracuda team, but they want to win hockey games, and they're not even though the development is important, you're still, if you go to one of those games, you're going to see a team that has a chance to win every single night. And, I think partially because of the farm system, you really haven't seen that from the Worcester Sharks and now the Barracuda over the last couple of years. So the Sharks are just in a good spot throughout their organization.
This has been a very good podcast.
Yeah.
That's good. We needed one of these. Okay, my computer is almost dead, so we're gonna wrap this up. That's fine. We've got a Sharks play the Coyotes Tuesday night. I don't know when you're listening or watching this, and then they'll come back home and they've got the Flames and the Penguins. All three of those games are very winnable. I think the Sharks played well enough to win at least 2 periods against the Penguins. They really, really, really are going to definitely lose this game against the Coyotes. Just absolutely. This feels like a game that the Sharks are just textbook going to lose. That they're going to outshoot stupid Mike Smith 45-15 and lose 1-0.
Mike Smith's hurt, so it might be Louis
right. I know. Well, then it's a backup goalie. That's almost worse.
Someone's going to score their first goal.
Yeah, right. Max Domi's going to have a hat trick.
They'll lose 3-2. They'll go to overtime. Something like that will happen. Calgary, they'll probably blitzkrieg. And then, I'm excited to see that Pittsburgh game because I think.
Me too. I think the Sharks want another crack at them.
I think it's also going to feel like a real rematch. Crosby's back. Letang could be back that game. I want those guys both to be in the lineup because I want that barometer of, okay, how much has this team changed? Because yes, they played well for those 2 periods, but not the best player on the planet and a team without a top 15 defenseman in the league and Chris Letang. Like that's Pittsburgh's blue line isn't much to write home about with Letang in the lineup, and without him,
the guy has sucked. He has been bad.
His development is one of the stranger things I think I've seen.
Someone's going to get him for cheap, and
he's hit a wall, and I don't really have an explanation why.
I don't know.
They probably should have kept Simon Dupre instead of trading him to Anaheim, which now is just going to bite the Sharks for the next however many years.
That trade is one of the most infuriating trades that's ever been made that hasn't involved the Sharks for me, because I see that trade, I'm like, okay, so you made a bad trade that hurt the Sharks. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Thank you.
They already traded away Ben Lovejoy too. That's the hilarious part. They traded him away and then they reacquired him.
Even good teams do dumb shit. That's going to be the name of my book. All right, we're going to wrap it up. You can follow me on Twitter at Jake Sundstrom and at Fear the Fin. You can follow Marcus at Marcus P. White. We'll be back next Monday, probably a lot earlier than this, because this is not great for our sleep schedules going forward. So thank you for listening or watching or both. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Bye, guys.